31 and then Malachi 2. Job 31 and Malachi 2. Once you get there, you can just kind of keep your place there for a second. So we're still going through the Love and Respect series here. Still on the couples acronym. We're on to L this week, which is loyalty. So the couples acronym has been for the husbands and kind of focusing on things for us as men that our wives need from us in ways that we can be loving like Christ loves the church, and for us to go through and just treat our wives the way that they need to be treated in order to keep the energizing cycle going. And that is where, as a husband, you treat your wife with the love that she needs, and she feels loved, and that energizes her, and then in turn she treats you with the respect that you need, and that energizes you. And we stay on the cycle of energizing, and the good cycle that keeps us energized with each other and keeps the peace and makes marriage fun and enjoyable, and that's the goal, right? That's where we want to be. So if we're going to get there, there are things that we have to do to make that happen. It just doesn't automatically happen, right? Because we're all sinful, we're all human beings, we all make mistakes, and surprisingly, we're kind of all pretty selfish and think a lot about ourselves, even in our own marriages and that relationship. So if we want to be on the energizing cycle, we have to intentionally behave a certain way. We have to intentionally treat each other a certain way, and sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's easy. But regardless of what the difficulty level may be, it's on us individually as the husband, as the wife, to be the one, right? You can't sit there and wait, well, once he starts doing this or once she starts doing that, then I will. That's not how God operates himself, and that's not how we should operate our marriage. We should be the one that is willing to do whatever is necessary in order to put us on that energizing cycle. So we're talking the last few weeks about husbands, and today we're going to talk about loyalty. And for men, your wife, she needs to know you're committed. Now, hopefully she knows that. You said, I do, right? You're married. But the problem is, even in Christian circles, about half of all marriages end in divorce. And that's a big number. 50%, and it doesn't really matter anymore these days. They used to differentiate between secular and Christian circles, and they're all kind of blended together now, and everything ends at about 50%. People just call it quits. And so a wife, and a husband too, but a wife needs to know from her husband that you're committed. And you know what? There'll be times where things aren't great. There'll be times where you're just not happy with each other. There'll be times where you're frustrated with each other. There'll be times where the health isn't good, the money isn't good, the situations aren't good, the kids aren't good. There are times where marriage can be tough and it can be hard. But God doesn't look at it and say, well, if it's tough, then just call it quits. You can go the other way. That's fine. He doesn't look at it that way, and then neither should we. So as a husband, we need to show our wives we're committed even after the I do. No matter how many years or months or however long it's been that we've been married, commitment from the husband to the wife gives assurance. Gives that wife assurance that she is loved, that she is needed, that there's some stability there. And that's our job as a husband, to show her that. She needs assurance and reassurance of your love, right? We talked about this, I've mentioned it before at least, wives will sometimes ask, do you love me? Rarely does a husband ask his wife, do you love me? Right? He assumes, he knows she's still there. There's food in the fridge and he's not being poisoned. So she's like, she obviously loves me, right? I'm still alive and I'm still in this house. The locks haven't changed. She loves me, obviously. But a wife doesn't necessarily think that way. A wife needs to know. She needs to know daily, and sometimes often per day, that she's loved. And we as husbands can be like, and I've heard this story, and it's usually, my grandpa, when he said, when I married your grandma, and I said I do, I said I love you, that was the last time I said it, because I said it and I meant it, and I don't have to change it. It's like, okay, that's okay. That's a real cool story, and it shows you're just, I don't change my mind. But a wife needs to know that she's loved, and she needs to hear it. She needs to be shown it. And for us as husbands, we can't be like, I said it, get over it, right? It goes back to being willing to do what is necessary for her. No matter what you feel or what you think or what your logic, quote unquote, may be, if your wife needs to know that you love her, then you need to find ways that she knows and show her in the ways that she understands. So she may ask, do you love me? And you'd be like, of course I love you. I've loved you since the day we met. Love at first sight. But then she might say, but what about when my hair starts turning gray and I stop hiding it? And when the wrinkles start showing up, then what about then? Will you love me still? And you'll say, well, of course I do. I mean, of course I will love you then when that happens. You guys are not on the ball today. Okay, that's fine. And she may say, but what if I get Alzheimer's? What if there are things, what if I can't take care of you anymore? What if you have to take care of me? What if I'm incapable of being who I am now? Will you still love me? Right? Will you love me when I maybe have a hard time loving you? And she may not say those words, but those might be thoughts in her heart and in her mind. And she wonders, when I'm no longer able to be for you what you need, will you still love me? And you could be funny, right? And you could be glib about it and say, what, are you afraid I'm going to trade you in for a new model? You could say that. You could say, oh, I plan to keep you around for a little while longer at least. Ha ha. And she'll know you're joking, most likely. She'll know you're kidding. But why this analogy, I'm going to kind of pause there. And you could say those things and she would know you're kidding. But think about it. Think about like an air tank, right? If you have a tank of air, whether it's medical or however you want to do it, we have air hoses that go to our lives. And a husband needs an air tank with a hose that's hooked up to respect, right? And a wife has a hose that's hooked up to an air tank that has love in it. And when you make jokes like, oh, I'll keep you around for a while longer, or no, don't worry, I'll love you when you're wrinkled. I mean, when you become that way, what you're essentially doing is you're kind of stepping on that air hose, or you're kinking that air hose. You're finding little, and it's nothing. It's silly. It can be a joke. But you might be taking some of that love that she needs and just kind of stepping on that air hose. Not completely. Air's still getting through, but it's not quite full, right? It's not going through as much as it should be. Why as a husband, and we can maybe think things are a little less serious than they are sometimes, at least I know I can. I could take things not seriously, very sarcastically, in moments where that's not necessarily appropriate, right? Because that's my personality. No, those aren't good excuses for when there are times where your wife, again, she needs to know you love her. She needs to be reassured of your love. And so sometimes stepping on that air hose and making jokes about things or making light of things isn't always appropriate. It doesn't mean you can't ever do it, right? It's not like you have to walk around on eggshells all the time. But your wife needs to know, she needs love from you like she needs air to breathe. Right? That's how she operates. Again, imagine that hose that runs to that tank that says love, and there are things you can do as a husband. There are things you can omit in your marriage that are stepping on that air hose, that restrict the airflow from the love tank that she needs in her life. And there are enough things in this world that can complicate relationships. Why would us as their husband make it harder on ourselves, really, by stepping on that air hose? Our actions, our words, our inactions, and our treatment of our wife determines how freely that air flows through that hose. And we can do things on purpose. We can do things inadvertently as husbands that kink that hose, that stop the flow of air. And we may not even realize it. We maybe just be stumbling around being oblivious to the case. And here we are standing on her air hose that she needs love from you. And we're missing it completely. And it's not a small thing. That's not something big. It's fine. She'll get over it. That's a big deal. So when your wife asks you, "Do you love me?" and she goes even deeper into when she's a certain way, or what if I can't do this, or what if I stop doing this, we can roll our eyes as men and say, "Man, she's so needy today. What is going on? She is so needy. Of course I love you." Oh, it's kind of exhausting. We roll our eyes, we can, of the neediness of reassurance of our love, but if we aren't careful, we're kinking that air hose at the same time. And we need to be aware. We need to understand where she's coming from. And these are all things we've talked about up to this point. We've talked about openness and closeness and understanding. We need to see those things as men, because men aren't worried about stepping on each other's air hoses. We might do it on purpose for fun, and when we get off, we'll be like, "Oh, you got me. That was a good one," and we move on. Your wife isn't that way. We've got to be careful as men about how we treat our wives so that she is fully reassured and fully assured that you love her, that you're loyal to her, that you're committed to her. You have to give her that reassurance, and she needs it. In different times, it may be stronger than at other times. And yeah, you can be like, man, this seems like a full-time job, trying to keep up with how much love she may need today or not tomorrow, or yeah, it might be. But you know what? You said I do, and your responsibility is your relationship with your wife. And yeah, that is a full-time job that you agreed to, that you wanted to do, that you were dying to do. You loved her so much, and now that maybe some time has passed, it can be a little monotonous. You can even be annoyed at how much your wife needs your love. Think about that. And we've all been there. If you're honest with yourselves, you could be a little annoyed at how much your wife needs to know you love her. Did you want someone else to step in and love her the way you're supposed to instead? No, of course not. So we need to be careful about how we view her needs, how we view her need for our loyalty. And it's not just, again, I said it once, I'm loyal to you forever. It's a day after day after day after day after day after day commitment, effort to show your I do every day, all the time, to her. There should never a day go by that she's not sure that you love her, that you're committed to her. But again, if she has to ask all the time, then she's not sure. Not to say that if she asks once, you've not done your job, right? She may ask even if you do what you're supposed to do all the time, and that's okay. Reassure. Tell her you love her. Show her ways that you do love her. She wants to know. It's air. It's how she lives. It's how she survives in that relationship. So reassure her. Of course I love you. We're going to grow gray and wrinkly together, right? That's what we're going to do. I love you. Of course, that never is going to change. And then here's the next question. So you ready for this, guys? It comes. You know it comes. She asks you, what if I don't do this? Or what if this happens? And you still tell her, of course, I'm still going to love you no matter what. Next question she may ask, she may say, what do you love about me? Yeah, and you're like, your brain starts scrambling, and you get that faraway look in your eyes. You're like, oh, don't say the wrong thing, right? You're afraid to put your foot in your mouth, right? Again, don't roll your eyes. Don't go, but know why you love her. And don't just go, well, you're pretty. And that might work, that's probably good. She'd be like, okay, and? Your hair looks nice. Thank you. And, right? And she doesn't necessarily just want to know about her appearance. That makes her look, and that's why she asked, what about if I'm gray? What about if wrinkles come? It's not just about her appearance, right? It's about who is she? Who she is. What do you love about her? What do you love about who she is? That's what she wants to know. And guys, since she doesn't want to lead us down the path and exactly everything to say, right? She wants us to know. She wants it to be there. She wants it to be on the surface. And it should be. Do you love her? Then think about those things. And I'm not saying, okay, I'm going to get that. Oh, yep, I knew you were going to ask this question. Here's my list. All right. I used that one the other day, so go down. But in your mind, you should have these things and why you love her. You should know. And you should love her. And see, when those questions come up, you feel like it's a pop quiz, like in school. And you're like, oh no, have I been paying attention the last week in class, or did I miss these things? And that's not it. That's not the wrong analogy. The analogy is this is your partner in life. This is who God gave you. The two of you are hard. If you're raising a family now, you might be raising a family in the future. You've raised a family already. You've got a relationship there that God has ordained between a man and a woman, and the two of you are one flesh. You should spend time thinking about your wife, so it's not a scramble to name some things that you love about her. It should be there because you think about her. You think a lot about work and all the things you got to list, the things you got to get done today. If I asked you tomorrow, what are the things you got to get done at work? You probably have those on top of your head. Because you think about it. You're planning on it. You organize it. How often do you think about your wife? Do you pray for her in the morning or whenever you have your prayer time? Is she on your mind there, or all the other things? Thank you for my wife. She's great. She's a good mom. right? These are things that will build your relationship, that will build that relationship stronger. And it takes time and it takes effort. And I'll be honest with you, and this isn't, don't be offended, ladies, but it's not natural for a man to do that. He's just not naturally going to do that because we're selfish. We're thinking about work because that's what we're made to do, and that's what goes on our mind, and that's what preoccupies a lot of our time. But that doesn't mean we don't love. That doesn't mean we don't care, but it does mean that we could do a better job of making that a priority. And when you do that, your wife feels loyalty from you. She knows that you're hers and she's yours. And that's important. It's important for her to know that she belongs to you and that you belong to her. And when you think about her and have things ready to talk about and you know why you love her and it's not a struggle to come up with things, she'll feel loved. That will energize her. And when she feels loved, she will show the respect that you need and you will be energized by that. So let's go to Job 31. Take a little bit of a turn here in the thought process of loyalty. Job 31, verse number 1, Job says, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I think upon a maid? So Job here, and we're just kind of cherry picking a verse out of here, but we live in a world where, man, you don't have to go looking for things to see that will take your loyalty away from your wife. When I was growing up, you had to try hard to find things. You don't have to try hard to find things these days. You can drive down the road on a nice day like today. There are girls out that are not dressed appropriately. They're not dressed for church, and you may not even intentionally be looking for it, but it might just be running down the side of the road. And if your eyes linger a second too long, your loyalty is in question. And Job says he's made a covenant with his eyes, and we have to be intentional. We have to be intentional about it as men. It's out there and it's promoted, it's shown, and it's advertised. And as men who are loyal to our spouses, we have to be careful about where we look. I'm not just talking about phones and magazines and websites. Yes, of course, those are things you avoid, but just out in the world, you have to be loyal to your wife, and you have to think that way when things come across your path. We live and work among people. It's going to happen. It's out there. But your mind and your heart need to be focused on why you love your wife. Job here understood in this, we're coming to the end here, but Job here understood the impact that his eyes and his relationship with his wife, and we know his relationship with his wife didn't go that great, when things started happening, but he knew that his spiritual life mattered to his relationship with his wife. Where he was spiritually with God mattered in this area for his loyalty with his wife. He understood the importance of purity in his eyes and in his heart and how that affected his wife's relationship. If you look for those things, if you go for walks or you're driving down the road and you hope you find those things, you may not think that or say that, but if you linger, if you let your eyes stay on things like that intentionally, and your wife might not be in the car with you in those moments, and your eyes stay there, or you look in the mirror as you pass by, where's your heart? Where's your spirit? Where's your loyalty to your wife? You're like, I didn't do anything. Jesus is pretty clear about thoughts and how just thinking on things that it's equated to adultery. And, you can't, I don't know if any man could say they're 100% innocent of never doing that. If you say that, I would probably call you a liar. But we have to know that, and we have to be aware of that, and we have to be understanding of ourselves as men in that area, and how even those looks that don't amount to anything, that steals away the loyalty you have for your wife. It takes it away from your heart, your spirit. It impacts it. You may think it's nothing, but it's something. It impacts your heart and your heart towards your wife. So when those things occur, that needs to be on the top of your mind, and you have to pray. You have to be talking to God. You have to be asking Him to help you, and you've got to be having the willpower and the thinking about your wife and the love you have for your wife to avoid those things. There are a lot of things in this world that will distract us. And when a wife knows that her husband is committed to the Lord, and if you're committed to the Lord like Job was here, make a covenant with your eyes, those things, you won't be enticed by those. You'll have a much easier way of overcoming that temptation. But when a wife knows that her husband is committed to the Lord and is striving to be God's man in all areas of his life, right, including his marriage, she feels more secure. When your wife knows that you're trying to be God's man for him first, but also for your relationship with her, that brings security. That brings a sense, a reassurance of love. Again, loyalty energizes her, right? And when she knows that you love God and that you want to live for God and you want to leave your family for God and you want your relationship to look to God, that energizes her. And that gives her a feeling of reassurance and a feeling of love. So when those things come up, when those things come across your path in your life, you better have a pretty good relationship with the Lord or you're going to fail. You'll fall. And you may just scrape your knee. It may not be a full face plant that ruins the relationship, but a constant, continually, if you scrape your knee over and over and over, you're going to have problems. So we've got to be in touch with God. We've got to have a relationship with him. We've got to be asking him to guard us, to have a covenant with our eyes, with the Lord, to give loyalty to our spouse, to our wife, to show her the love that she needs, not kinking that air hose. So loyalty energizes her. And again, that in the wedding vows, till death do us part, right? That's a commitment we made. Now, I went to the men's advance. Commitment was a big deal we talked about, but this world's not too big on commitments anymore. And we can even break our promises, give our word. Words are not bonds anymore, it seems. But in your relationship as a Christian with your wife, that to death do us part is a serious thing. And that's not just you're with her, right? Like we live in the same house, we're raising the same kids, we're roommates, I'm with her, but you love her. You're committed to loving her and showing her the way that you love her and reassuring her of your love, not just being, but growing spiritually together in that relationship till death do us part. Go over to Malachi real quick, Malachi chapter 2. So as I bring that thing up, and it's uncomfortable to talk about those things, but again, we have to be honest with ourselves. If we aren't, we're just silly to not be honest with ourselves. So as we transition from that thought to Malachi here, I want to ask us men, are you being as loyal as you could be? As a husband, are you as loyal as you could be? And again, we're still married, things are pretty good. I'm talking about probably more your heart, your spirit, where you are mentally with your spouse. Are you as loyal as you could be? We talked about divorce at the beginning. Malachi chapter 2, verse number 14. Malachi 2:14 says, "Yet you say, wherefore? Because the Lord hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously. Yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. And did not he make one? Yet he had the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore, take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. For the Lord, the God of Israel, saith that he hateth putting away. For one covereth violence with his garment, saith the Lord of hosts. Therefore, take heed to your spirit, that ye deal not treacherously." God hates divorce. And if we go into the Gospels here, where the Pharisees come and try to challenge Jesus on, well, Moses said you could put him away. That, in Malachi here, God is not okay with that. God made provision for that because we're sinful. But he didn't even really make provision for it. Right? There are a couple reasons where God's like, I guess that's okay, but it's not what he would prefer. In every case, putting away, he hates it. I mean, that's strong language. So divorce should never, ever, 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 ever be part of the conversation. It should never come up. It should never be a thought. You're married now. You're together. That's the way it should be. Can you go back to your past and change it? No. But you can take care of the future and where you go from here. And that's what God's about. God's about where you are now, dealing with your wife in a positive way, and taking care of and being what you're supposed to be. So a good-willed husband is most likely not being treacherous with his wife. And he mentions treacherously, dealing with your wife treacherously a couple times. Right? And we'll be like, I'm not dealing treacherously with her. Not at all. Not like laying traps out in the middle of the night and walking around and spitting my mustache treacherously, Like, we're not doing things intentionally. But again, this is a good reminder to self-evaluate where you stand, where your spirit is. What's going on in your spirit in regards to the relationship with your wife? Right? There are always times where we're frustrated. You cannot say there's never been a time in your life where you're just straight up mad at your wife. You're upset at her. She's not listening. Whatever. Fill in the blanks. I'm not even attempt to fill in the blanks. Where you're upset and the feelings are just not good. The spirit towards her is poor. And there, you can't ever say that there haven't been times where you might have even done something intentionally to stick it to her. Of course you have, because we're human. We all have done that. Hopefully we've repented of that. When we saw it and we felt it, we changed. But as a good-willed husband, right, that's trying to live a godly life, trying to do the best they can as a husband, this is a good reminder to evaluate where you stand with your spouse, where your loyalty is. What's going on in your spirit? Are there things that are catching your eyes, that are catching your heart, that are catching your mind that could be seen as disloyal? That's dealing treacherously. It's not dealing honestly or openly. It's dealing treacherously. Those are treacherous actions towards your wife. What are your feelings for your wife right now, at this moment, sitting here right now, honest, open, completely honest with yourself? How do you feel about your wife right now? Are you as loyal as you could be? Are you being as open and understanding and close as you could be? Or are there walls put up? Are there things in between? Are you as open as you could possibly be with your wife? Are you being as loyal as you could be? And if you're not, and most honestly, there are probably areas that we could improve as a husband if we were honest with ourselves, then we need to work on those things. She needs to feel love from you. And these are ways that you can do it. You evaluate where you're at with your openness, with your honesty, with your understanding of her, with your showing of love, with not kinking that air hose. If that air hose is being kinked at all by you, if you're stepping on it in any way whatsoever, then you're not being as loyal as you could be. Again, God says he hates divorce. And again, I mentioned this already, so I jumped ahead of my notes, but the Pharisees tried to justify the action to God himself with divorce. The putting away of marriage is a situation that begins when divorce happens. It always starts with the crazy cycle somewhere, right? The crazy cycle begins, and if it's not dealt with, if it's increased, if two people aren't willing, it ends in divorce. Divorce always ends where a crazy cycle began. It's a situation where a crazy cycle begins. So that's why we must stay open. That's why you must be understanding and stay on the energizing cycle as much as humanly possible. It needs to be a goal. It needs to be a desire, not just things are good today. Phew, dodged a bullet today. No, it needs to be on purpose, intentional way to stay on the energizing cycle and avoid all the craziness we possibly can. There's enough craziness without it adding to our marriage. There's enough craziness in this world. There's enough craziness going on everywhere. The last place we want the crazy cycle to exist is in our marriage. But again, as a husband, which is who we're talking to today, that takes us intentionally doing things that we know that show her she's loved and avoiding the things that would be considered treacherous and taking away loyalty. And that means you got to be on your game. That means you got to be proactive. It has to be done on purpose, intentionally, to show her that you love her. Being loyal is being loving. So as we wrap up here, a few things that she is assured of your loyalty when you do. We had the list that we've done. We have a few things here. She's assured of your love, and we really didn't even talk about this, but when you speak highly of her in front of other people, when you praise her to other people, she knows you love her. She feels assured of your love when you praise her in front of other people. When you're involved in things that are important to her. Don't care if you like it or not, really. Shouldn't matter if you enjoy it. If your wife has a hobby or your wife has things that she likes to do, even if it's shopping, it's hard to say. Find joy in things that she enjoys, right? I mean, we can go back to budgets and all the things that fall under that and make it more enjoyable for a husband. But if she enjoys something, then do it with her. Find things that she enjoys and find joy in those. Find things that she finds important and do them and be involved in them. Help her make decisions, especially ones regarding the children. right? If your wife needs help with the kids, just say, it's yours. It's the kids. That's up to you. She's going to be like, do you not care? She feels loved when you're willing to get involved with the kids. That means getting your girls dressed. That means helping the boys get dressed. That means helping the boys get cleaned up. Whatever the case may be, especially as they're younger, being involved in that as a dad, that's not lame. That's cool. Okay? It's loving. Be involved with the kids. Help with the kids. Don't correct her in front of the kids. She'll feel assured of your love when you don't correct her in front of the kids. Don't argue in front of the kids. Take that off to the side. Don't let your kids see that. Don't look lustfully at other women. She will feel assured of your love when you don't look lustfully at other women. Even if she notices or doesn't notice, she'll be assured of your love. And even if she doesn't notice, it still affects you. You make your marriage a priority. She'll feel assured of your love if you make your marriage a priority, not an afterthought, not we're getting through it, we're fine. But if you make it a priority, it's important to you as it is to her. You're never critical of her in front of others. We should never be critical of our wives in front of other people. Never. If we have things that we need to talk to each other about, if there are things as a husband and wives, it works both ways. Both of us be willing to hear criticisms from your spouse that may help you and make you a better person, may help you see things that you don't see. We all have blind spots. But we should never be critical of our wives to our friends. We should never be critical of our wives in a group setting. We should never be critical of our wives to anybody. Right? She will be assured of your love if that doesn't happen. You make sure your kids don't treat or speak to her in a disrespectful way. Right? As husbands, as dads, you cannot let your kids be that way. And they will want to be that way because they are kids. And they will grow up because they're little sinners too. Little dirty, rotten sinners that are your kids. That are dirty, rotten sinners just like you are. And they will be disrespectful to their mother, your wife. Don't let your kids be disrespectful to your wife. She's your wife. Defend her and teach your kids at the same time. Don't let them speak to her that way. You call and let her know your plans. Don't keep her in the dark with stuff. Fill her in. And you keep commitments. When you do these things among so many other things, and you don't do some of these things among so many other things, you show your wife that you love her. You assure her of your loyalty to her. And again, going through this couple acronym, it is ways that she understands love and will help keep her on the energizing cycle, which is good for us, which is good for the relationship. And as men, we don't always see it. And sometimes it doesn't seem important to us, or it goes over our head because we're just stupid. Whatever the case may be, don't be stupid. Be smart. Follow what God says to do. Tell your wife you love her. Show her you love her. And do all the things that assure her of your love for her and keep the energizing cycle going.